Hey everybody.
Fatbird Finds here.
I'm Mary Beth.
And I'm Laura.
What's up?
Welcome to the podcast, people.
Did anybody notice that I went live for like 4 seconds earlier on accident?
Is that why all these people are here already?
Maybe. It was an accident. I hit the wrong button and I was like,
oh no, when you did that I think my face was in it.
Yeah.
Oh
probably.
no.
I deleted it, so it's possible.
Oh, thank God.
It's possible somebody saw it, but who knows. Anyway.
Karen said I did.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so we are live this time for the podcast. If you're joining on YouTube live, welcome. We're really excited.
Yeah, so if we are going to be able to see comments.
Yes.
So that's a little different than what the podcast usually is.
Exactly. So if you're listening to this later out there in podcast land on your favorite app, welcome. We would love for you to come over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel.
Yes.
Okay. So let's recap what's happened in the past chapter or so.
Okay, you tell me what you think. I think I recapped last time.
Okay. Well, so I remember that Victor has made the monster. It's just out running around. Nobody knows where it is.
The creature.
So Victor's just like so happy that it's gone. He's like just washed his hands of it.
Uh-oh, somebody's saying there's an echo.
Oh.
Maybe we should fix that.
Maybe. I don't know how to fix it. Will you check on that? See if you detect an echo? Because we definitely want to fix that.
Karen says you were walking away earlier. Okay. No echo
here.
Okay. Karen, what do you think? How's it
I'm having
sounding?
Nikki check it.
Okay. All right. Okay, so maybe we'll just continue.
Okay. So anyway, the creature's just out.
Yes.
Who knows where? Just running around.
How could he just wash his hands of this creature?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, I mean, how could he just be like, I'm just not gonna think about it anymore?
But
I mean, maybe he thinks that he died.
But he's just like happy. He's just like, oh, everything's great. But then he got sick, and his friend Henry was taking care of him for a long time.
Yep.
And that's all. That's the last thing I remember.
He hasn't been home, and then he's just gotten this beautiful letter from Elizabeth. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, everything's going pretty well for Victor at the moment. I mean, he's like not very conscious of what he's done yet.
But how long can that last, really?
It can't.
It's not going to go well.
It can't. I think that he and Henry went on a trip. Remember, they walked around and they were just really enjoying each other's company. He and Henry, and Henry has brought him this letter from Elizabeth, I think, and everything's just going swimmingly.
And our other setup. So if you're watching on YouTube, we have this setup from our show last night. Our regular setup, we're farther away, and you probably can't see the cover of the book when we're far away. So if you're watching, I think that's just a really cool book cover. So anyway, we are on chapter 7.
Carrie says she hears you echoing, but we'll see.
Oh, well, Nikki hasn't come in here and told me anything.
Good with some people though. Everybody's different.
Here, let me unplug them and I'll plug them back.
Sorry, bear with us for just a second because we're going to have this published as a podcast later. We don't want it to be echoey. Carrie, yes. I mean, that's Mary. I'm just saying that I think they just were very romantically inclined in those days.
Yeah.
In Geneva, but.
Okay, so I've unplugged them and plugged them back up.
Okay.
I might be a little hot. That might be what's happening.
Heather says,
Hold on a second. Can you, I'm gonna switch scenes to look at our.
Just Laura, stop talking and just you talk.
Okay, I'm doing a mic test. We should have done this earlier. I'm gonna look at a different scene and look at my mic volume. So just a second. Okay, 40 and 41. I think that was the issue. I might have fixed it. No? I'm still echoey?
It's not like an echo, it's like a reverberation. It's almost like an effect.
Well, I don't have any effects on.
We might have to.
Okay, see if that helped. Okay. Okay, and then I've done something else. So see if that worked.
Well, I think it helped. The first thing you did. I'm just now hearing that. Helen says, I should have caught up. I didn't know about this. Y'all probably mentioned it last night.
Okay, I think we're good now. Sorry about that, those of you who are listening in podcast land.
It's okay. These things happen.
They do.
But we're ready now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to start with chapter 7.
Yeah, I was just going to say to Heather, I think she wants to know if it's ever been written from the monster's perspective. I think that there's a section in the book that is from his perspective.
That's exciting.
But we'll see.
Okay. All right, so chapter 7 begins with a sentence at the top that says, on my return, I found the following letter from my father. And then it starts with the letter.
Okay, this is Victor talking.
Yeah, but the letter is from his father.
Okay.
So the letter begins, my dear Victor, you have probably waited impatiently for a letter to fix the date for your return to us. And I was at first tempted to write only a few lines, merely mentioning the day on which I should expect you. But that would be a cruel kindness, and I dare not do it. What would be your surprise, my son, when you expect a happy and glad welcome to behold, on the contrary, tears and wretchedness?
Oh, no.
And how, Victor, can I relate our misfortune?
Oh, no.
Absence cannot have rendered you callous to our joys and griefs. And how shall I inflict pain on my long absent son? I wish to prepare you for the woeful news, but I know it is impossible. Even now, your eye skims over the page to seek the words which are to convey to you the horrible tidings.
Oh, God.
William is dead. That sweet child whose smiles delighted and warmed my heart, who was so gentle yet so gay. Victor, he is murdered.
Oh, no.
His little brother. It's Victor's little brother.
Oh, no.
I will not attempt to console you, but I will simply relate the circumstances of the transaction. Last Thursday, May 7th, I, my niece, and 2 of your brothers went to walk in Plain Place? Plain Place, You think?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's the adjoining city, but adjacent city, but I'm not sure how they pronounce it.
The evening was warm and serene, and we prolonged our walk farther than usual. It was already dusk before we thought of returning, and we discovered that William and Ernest, who had gone on before, were not to be found. We accordingly rested on a seat until they should return. Presently Ernest came and inquired if we had seen his brother. He said that he had been playing with him, that William had run away to hide himself, and that he vainly sought for him, and afterwards waited for him a long time, but he did not return.
Nothing good comes from hide and seek.
Ever?
Ever. Don't go playing hide and seek.
Ever?
Ever.
Oh.
I mean, if you're hidden, how are somebody supposed to know if there's something happened to you?
Yeah, hide and seek can go the wrong way sometimes.
Beth thinks the creature may have gotten him.
Uh-oh. This account rather alarmed us, and we continued to search for him until night fell.
Now, this is Elizabeth and Victor's dad.
Yeah.
Out with the 2 boys.
Yeah.
Yep.
This account rather alarmed us, and we continued to search for him until night fell, when Elizabeth conjectured that he might have returned to the house. He was not there. We returned again with torches, for I could not rest when I thought that my sweet boy had lost himself and was exposed to all the damps and dews of the night. Elizabeth also suffered extreme anguish. About 5 in the morning, I discovered my lovely boy, whom the night never before I had seen blooming and active in health, stretched on the grass, livid and motionless. The print of the murderer's finger was on his neck.
Dun, dun, dun. That's terrible.
He was conveyed home, and the anguish that was visible in my countenance betrayed the secret to Elizabeth, and she was very earnest to see the corpse. At first I attempted to prevent her, but she persisted, and entering the room where it lay, hastily examining the neck of the victim and clasping her hands, exclaimed, "Oh God, I have murdered my darling child."
I think she's going to go on to explain why she says that.
Okay. She fainted.
Oh.
Of course
Here we
she
go.
did.
Of course she did.
She fainted and was restored with extreme difficulty. When she again lived, it was only to weep and sigh. She told me that same evening William had teased her to let him wear a very valuable miniature that she possessed of your mother. This picture is gone, and was doubtless the temptation which urged the murderer to the deed. We have no trace of him at present, although our exertions to discover him are unremitted, but they will not be destroyed, my beloved William. But they will not restore my beloved William.
So he asked to wear a necklace with a picture of their mom.
Right.
And she let him.
Right.
And they think that he's been killed by a robber and
That wanted the necklace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come, dearest Victor, you alone could console Elizabeth. She weeps continually and accuses herself unjustly as the cause of his death. Her words pierce my heart. We are all unhappy, but will not that be an additional motive for you, my son, to return to be our comforter? Your dear mother, alas, Victor, I say now, thank God she did not live to witness this cruel, miserable death of her youngest darling. Come, Victor, not brooding thoughts of vengeance against the assassin, but with feelings of peace and gentleness that will heal instead of festering the wounds of our minds. Enter the house of mourning, my friend, but with kindness and affection for those you love, and not with hatred for your enemies. Your affectionate and afflicted father, Alphonse, Frankenstein, Geneva, May 12th, 17.
Whatever. Helen,
Your
are you
affectionate and afflicted father?
Isn't that terrible? Your
What a
affectionate
way.
and afflicted father.
What a way to sign off.
Right? And Helen says that one of her little cousins died playing hide and seek.
Oh, no.
And back then it was dangerous.
That is so sad.
Helen, is that really true?
That's terrible.
I told you, hide and seek is really something.
It can be. I can see that. You know, I heard a story before of, you know, kids hiding in the darndest places and getting trapped, and, you know, nobody can find them, obviously. I can remember when I was really little, like under 5 years old, we were playing hide and seek, and some older kids and I were hiding under a camper, you know, like you used to put a camper on the back of your truck that was like laying just out in the yard.
Oh, yeah.
And we hid under that camper. Of course, I couldn't lift it. The older kids did, and we were all hiding under there. But all it would have taken was some of those older kids to just leave me there.
Oh, yeah. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Yikes.
I know.
I told you, nothing good can come of it.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Okay, so, oh my God. So, Victor and Henry have had this idyllic little outing or whatever that they've been doing and come home to this letter.
Yeah.
That's tragic. Okay.
It's not good. Clerval, who had watched my countenance as I read this letter, was surprised to observe the despair that succeeded to the joy I first expressed on receiving news from my friends. I threw the letter on the table and covered my face with my hands. "My dear Frankenstein," exclaimed Henry, where he perceived me weep with bitterness. "Are we always to be unhappy? My dear friend, what has happened?" I motioned to him to take up the letter while I walked up and down the room in the extremest agitation. Agitation. Tears also gushed from the eyes of Clerval as he read the account of my misfortune. "I can offer you no consolation, my friend," said he. "Your disaster is irreparable. What do you intend to do?" "To go instantly to Geneva. Come with me, Henry, to order the horses."
Yeah. So really, they've basically, I know it's been about 3 or 4 years, but really they've just come out the other side from losing their mom so tragically. Right. So
Yeah.
that's why he says, can we never be happy?
Yeah. During our walk, Clerval endeavored to say a few words of consolation. He could only express his heartfelt sympathy. Poor William, said he, dear lovely child, he now sleeps with his angel mother, who that had seen him bright and joyous in his young beauty must weep over his untimely loss. To die so miserably, to feel the murderer's grasp, how much more a murderer that could destroy such radiant innocence. Poor little fellow, the only consolation we have. His friends mourn and weep, but he is at rest. The pain is over. His sufferings are at an end forever. A sod covers his gentle form, and he knows no pain. He can no longer be a subject for pity. We must reserve that for his miserable survivors. He's
Yikes.
like so eloquent.
Very.
Yeah.
They're all very eloquent.
Yeah. He's just such a poet. Clerval spoke thus. We hurried through the streets. The words impressed themselves in my mind, and I remembered them afterwards in solitude. But now, as soon as the horses arrived, I hurried into a cabriolet?
I guess so.
Cabriolet, and bade farewell to my friend.
I think maybe that's a carriage.
I guess so. That's what it sounds like. My journey was very melancholy. At first I wished to hurry on, for I longed to console and sympathize with my loved and sorrowing
Henry
friends.
didn't go with him?
Oh. Yeah, Henry just went with him to get the horses.
Okay.
But when I drew near my native town, I slackened my progress. I could hardly sustain the multitude of feelings that crowded into my mind. I passed through the scenes familiar to my youth, but which I had not seen for nearly 6 years.
6 years.
6 years. Can you imagine?
No.
I can't either. How altered everything might be during that time. One sudden and desolating change had taken place, but 1,000 little circumstances might have by degrees worked other alterations, which, although they were done more tranquilly, might not be less decisive. Fear overcame me. I dared not advance, dreading 1,000 nameless evils that make me tremble, although I was unable to define them. I remained 2 days at Lausanne in this painful state of mind. I contemplated the lake. The waters were placid, all around was calm, and the snowy mountains, the palace of nature, were not changed. By degrees, the calm and heavenly scene restored me, and I continued my journey toward Geneva. The road ran by the side of the lake, which became narrower as I approached my native town. I discovered more distantly the black sides of Jura and the bright summit of Mont Blanc. I wept like a child. Dear mountains, my own beautiful lake, how do you welcome your wanderer? Your summits are clear. The sky and lake are blue and placid. To this no prognostic peace, or to mock at my unhappiness. Oh shoot! I hit my mic.
Well, we've had a request from the studio audience that I should do sound effects while you're reading. That would really be something.
Yeah, that's pretty good. My journey was... Did I read that already? I did.
Yes.
Did I? Yeah. I think I'm done with that page.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
He was being mocked by the beautiful nature surrounding him when you stopped.
Yeah. I fear, my friend, that I shall render myself tedious by dwelling on these preliminary circumstances, but they were days of comparative happiness, and I think of them with pleasure. My country, my beloved country, who but a native can tell the delight I look in again, beholding thy streams, thy mountains, and more than all, thy lovely lake. So, I mean, he's happy to be home, but
You can't be happy.
Yeah.
He's never going to be happy again.
Never.
Mary Beth.
Never again.
This is it. This is the, farewell to everything that's beautiful in his life here.
Yeah. So he's having good feelings looking at this scenery, but yet as I drew nearer home, grief and fear again overcame me. Night also closed around, and when I could hardly see the dark mountains, I felt still more gloomily. The picture appeared a vast and dim scene of evil, and I foresaw obscurely that which I was destined to become the most wretched of human beings.
Yes.
Yikes.
He's on the downhill.
Alas,
slide.
I prophesied truly and failed only in one single circumstance, that in all the misery I imagined and dreaded, I did not conceive the 100th part of the anguish that I was destined to endure. Wow.
Yeah. It's extreme.
It was completely dark when I arrived in the environs of Geneva. The gates of the town were already shut, and I was obliged to pass the night at Secheron, a village at the distance of half a league from the city.
Okay, so he couldn't get home.
Yeah, the gates were closed. The sky was serene, and I was unable to rest. I resolved to visit the spot where my poor William had been murdered.
Oh my God, in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
Oh.
As I could not pass through the town, I was obliged to cross the lake in a boat to arrive at Plain Peleus. During this short voyage, I saw the lightnings play on the summit of Mount Blanc in the most beautiful figures. The storm appeared to approach rapidly, and on landing, I ascended a low hill that I might observe its progress. It advanced, the heavens were clouded, and I soon felt the rain coming slowly in large drops.
Oh my gosh.
But its violence quickly increased. Now there's a storm coming.
He's out in the middle of the woods where his brother was killed.
Yeah.
And there's a storm.
Yeah. I quitted my seat and walked on, although the darkness and storm increased every minute, and the thunder burst with a terrific crash over my head. It was echoed from Sélève, the Jura and Alps of Savoy. Vivid flashes of lightning dazzled my eyes.
Ooh, I wonder how that really would be. Because you know how you see in the movies, people are in Switzerland, and that's where they do all the yodeling and the echoing and stuff. So all that storm is just like some violent, echoey crashing.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It was, Vivid flashes of lightning dazzled my eyes, illuminating the lake, making it appear like a vast sheet of fire. Then for an instant, everything seemed of a pitchy darkness, until the eye recovered itself from the preceding flash. The storm, as is often in the case in Switzerland, appeared at once in various parts of the heavens. The most violent storm hung exactly north of the town, over that part of the lake which lies between the promontory of Bellerive and the village of Coppet. Another storm enlightened Jura with faint flashes, and another darkened and sometimes disclosed the Mole, a peaked mountain to the east of the lake. So we've got lots of landmarks.
You've summoned the trolls with the talk of all the thunder and lightning.
How is that? Thanks,
Carrie got them though.
Lord.
Oh, I know, right?
While I watched the tempest, so beautiful yet terrific, I wandered on with a hasty step.
I mean, this is like the ultimate. I wish we could impress how scary this probably is. This is like the ultimate scary movie scene.
Yeah.
Thunder and lightning crashing everywhere. It's pouring down rain. You can't hardly see. When the lightning lights up, is the only time when you can see something, and this guy is in this desperate,
and he's blinded when it does happen. He's got these light spots in his eyes.
He's in this desperately grieving state, and he's in the spot where his brother was killed.
While I watched the tempest, so beautiful yet terrific, I wandered on with a hasty step.
The tempest.
This noble war in the sky elevated my spirits. I clasped my hands and exclaimed aloud, "William, dear angel, this is thy funeral, this thy dirge." As I said these words, I perceived in the gloom a figure which stole from behind a clump of trees near me.
Oh my God.
I stood fixed, gazing intently. I could not be mistaken. A flash of lightning illuminated the object and discovered its shape plainly to me, its gigantic stature, and the deformity of its aspect more hideous than belongs to humanity.
Oh my God, it's him!
Instantly informed me that it was the wretch, the filthy demon to whom I had given life. What did he there? Could he be, I shuddered at the conception, the murderer of my brother?
Oh no.
No sooner did
The filthy demon.
No sooner did that idea cross my imagination that I became convinced of its truth. My teeth chattered, and I was forced to lean against a tree for support. The figure passed me quickly, and I lost it in the gloom. Nothing in human shape could have destroyed that fair child. He was the murderer. I could not doubt it. The mere presence of the idea was an irresistible proof of the fact. I thought of pursuing the devil, but it would have been in vain, for another flash discovered him to me hanging among the rocks of the nearly perpendicular ascent of Mount Selev.
Oh my God, he's like climbing the mountain.
A hill that bounds plain Peleus on the south. He soon reached the summit and disappeared. I remained motionless. The thunder ceased, but the rain still continued, and the scene was enveloped in an impenetrable darkness. I revolved in my mind the events which I had until now sought to forget. The whole train of my progress toward the creation, the appearance of the work of my own hands alive at my bedside, its departure. 2 years now had elapsed since the night on which he first received life. And this was his first crime? Alas, I had turned loose into the world a depraved wretch, though whose delight was in carnage and misery. Had he not murdered
Victor?
my brother. I'm going to let you go from there. I'm getting thirsty.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Victor, what did you think was going to happen? No one can conceive the anguish I suffered during the remainder of the night, which I spent cold and wet in the open air. But I did not feel the inconvenience of the weather. My imagination was busy in scenes of evil and despair. I considered the being whom I had cast among mankind and endowed with the will and power to effect purposes of horror, such as the deed which he had now done, nearly in the light of my own vampire, my own spirit let loose from the grave, and forced to destroy all that was dear to me. Day dawned, and I directed my steps towards the town. The gates were open, and I hastened to my father's house. My first thought was to discover what I knew of the murderer and cause instant pursuit to be made. But I paused when I reflected on the story that I had to tell. A being whom I myself had formed and endued with life had met me at midnight among the precipices of an inaccessible mountain. I remembered also the nervous fever with which I had been seized just at the time that I dated my creation, and which would give an air of delirium to a tale otherwise so utterly improbable.
Yeah, so what's he gonna do?
He's like...
So on one hand, he's like, I feel very confident that this dude has, like, shanked my brother.
Yes.
But on the other hand, he's like, I can't tell anybody this because then I'm going to have to be like, guys, I've got to tell you something.
I've created this creature.
Okay, so let's go back a few years. I was crazy and I made this dude and I think he might have killed my brother. I mean, you can't just say that.
No, nobody's even going to believe him.
So they're going to put him away.
Yeah.
So he probably needs to be put away.
Probably. I well knew that if any other had communicated such a relation to me, I should have looked upon it as the ravings of insanity.
Yeah.
Besides, the strange nature of the animal would elude all pursuit, even if I were so far credited as to persuade my relatives to commence it. And then of what use... And then of what use would be pursuit? Who could arrest a creature capable of scaling the overhanging sides of Mount Selev?
Right.
These reflections determined me, and I resolved to remain silent.
Yeah, Carrie's like, see, what happened was...
Exactly. He's like, okay, so plan B. I'm not going to tell that.
Yeah.
It was about 5 a.m. when I entered my father's house. I told the servants not to disturb the family and went into the library to attend their usual hour of rising. 6 years had elapsed, passed as a dream but for one indelible trace, and I stood in the same place where I had last embraced my father before my departure for Ingolstadt. Beloved and venerable parent, he still remained to me. I gazed on the picture of my mother, which stood over the mantelpiece. It was an historical object painted at my father's desire and represented Caroline Beaufort in an agony of despair, kneeling by the coffin of her dead father. Her garb was rustic and her cheek pale, but there was an air of dignity and beauty that hardly permitted the sentiment of pity. Below this picture was a miniature of William, and my tears flowed when I looked upon it. While I was thus engaged, Ernest entered. That's the other brother.
The other brother.
Mm-hmm. He had heard me arrive and had hastened to welcome me. He expressed a sorrowful delight to see me. "Welcome, my dearest Victor," said he. "Ah, I wish you had come 3 months ago, and then you would have found us all joyous and delighted. You come to us now to share a misery which nothing can alleviate, yet your presence will, I hope, revive our father, who seems sinking under his misfortune, and your persuasions will induce poor Elizabeth to cease her vain and tormenting self-accusations. Poor William, he was our darling and our pride." So thank goodness Victor's back, because, I mean, Elizabeth is about to throw herself over a cliff somewhere because she thinks it's her fault. Now, how is Victor going to reconcile that?
I think I would be mad if my brother hadn't been home in 6 years. I think I would be sort of resentful.
Well, brother or / future husband. I
Yeah.
mean, they're supposed to, he and Elizabeth are destined to be together.
I would feel really resentful.
Yeah.
I'll be like, who do you think you are?
Yet they are very glad to see him.
I get it, but I don't know.
Tears unrestrained fell from my brother's eyes. A sense of mortal agony crept over my frame. Before, I had only imagined the wretchedness of my desolated home. The reality came on me as a new and not less terrible disaster. I tried to calm Ernest. I inquired more minutely concerning my father, and her I named my cousin. "She most of all," said Ernest, "requires consolation. She accused herself of having caused the death of my brother, and that made her very wretched. But since the murderer has been discovered..."
Oh.
The murderer discovered?
Oh.
Good God, how can that be?
How can that be?
Who could attempt to pursue him? It's impossible. One might as well try to overtake the winds or confine a mountain stream with a straw.
Is he saying that or
I
thinking
saw
it?
him. He's thinking it. I saw him too. He was free last night. Oh no, he's saying it. He's saying it.
Oh no, what
So
are you doing?
he's like-
you're telling on yourself.
Well, yeah, but he,
Yeah.
he just knows that it's
Right.
him. So he's assuming that Ernest knows that too.
Yeah.
"I don't know what you mean," replied my brother.
Ernest is like, what?
In accents of wonder. "But to us, the discovery we have made completes our misery. No one would believe it at first, and even now Elizabeth will not be convinced, notwithstanding all the evidence. Indeed, who would credit that Justine Moritz, who was so amiable and fond of all the family, could suddenly become capable of so frightful, so appalling a crime?"
Justine?
Poor Justine.
Justine's like going about her day.
We don't even know Justine really in this book.
Not very
she's-
well.
Here they think that she's murdered this.
She's the house girl, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But she was kind of taken into the house though as more almost a member of the family.
Right.
But a servant of the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, okay, so Victor says, "Justine Moritz, poor girl, is she the accused? But it is wrongfully. Everyone knows that. No one believes it. Surely, Ernest."
Victor, let me just say, Victor, if you let her go down for this,
Yeah.
I am so pissed right now.
Right?
Yeah. Victor, you are just the worst.
I mean, he knows. He knows she didn't do it.
Victor, I'm telling you, don't let her go down for this. I'm coming for you.
Damn. Okay, so he said, like, surely nobody believes this, Ernest. And Ernest says, no one did at first, but several circumstances came out that have almost forced conviction upon us, and her own behavior has been so confused as to add to the evidence of facts a weight that I fear leaves no hope for doubt. But she will be tried today, and you will then hear all.
It's only been a few days, hasn't it?
I don't know. I mean, I think it probably took Victor some days to get there.
Yeah, you're right. It probably took a while.
He related that the morning on which the murder of poor William had been discovered, Justine had been taken ill and confined to her bed for several days. During this interval, one of the servants, happening to examine the apparel she had worn on the night of the murder, had discovered in her pocket the picture of my mother, which had been judged to be the temptation of the murderer.
Uh-oh.
The servant instantly showed it to one of the others, who, without saying a word to any of the family, went to a magistrate, and upon their deposition, Justine was apprehended. On being charged with the fact, the poor girl confirmed the suspicion in a great measure by her extreme confusion of manner.
Okay, let's back up a second. We have jumped to the conclusion that this creature was the murderer. Maybe we are being not very nice here.
Maybe.
Because the creature hasn't done anything wrong at this point. Why do we jump to that conclusion?
Exactly, right?
We've got evidence here for Justine. There's a piece of proof.
Poor Justine.
Small.
I don't know.
Small.
I don't know.
I'm not saying Justine did it, but I'm saying we have zero proof or clues that the creature has done it, except Victor just feels it in his heart.
Right.
So maybe we're terrible people.
And Victor's, of course, guilty conscience is leading him to believe that.
But maybe we should call ourselves out for what we are. We're being judgmental.
Calling ourselves out. All right. Let's see. Okay. This was a strange tale, but it did not shake my faith, and I replied earnestly, "You are all mistaken. I know the murderer. Justine, poor good Justine, is innocent." So maybe he's going to try a little bit.
He's telling on himself.
At that instant, my father entered. I saw unhappiness deeply impressed on his countenance. But he endeavored to welcome me cheerfully, and after we had exchanged our mournful greeting, would have introduced some other topic than that of our disaster, had not Ernest exclaimed, "Good God, Papa! Victor says he knows who was the murderer of poor William." "We do also, unfortunately," replied my father, "for indeed I had rather have been forever ignorant than to have discovered so much depravity and ingratitude in one I valued so highly." "My dear father, you are mistaken. Justine is innocent. If she is, God forbid that she should suffer as guilty. She is to be tried today, and I sincerely hope, that she will be acquitted."
Okay. Back up a second. Also, if I had taken this person into my home and like raised them as a part of the family, and it would take a lot more than just a picture in her pocket to convince me that she was guilty. They all feel on board that she did it. That's sketchy to me. I mean, if all of a sudden something happened and you had a little piece of proof on you that maybe you had done something, I wouldn't believe it. It would take a lot for me to believe that you were capable of something like that.
True. Okay, so Victor, it's back to Victor. He says, this speech calmed me. I was firmly convinced in my own mind that Justine, and indeed every human being, was guiltless of this murder. I had no fear, therefore, that any circumstantial evidence could be brought forward strong enough to convict her. My tale was not one to announce publicly. Its astounding horror would be looked upon as madness by the vulgar. Did anyone indeed exist except I, the Creator, who would believe, unless his senses convinced him, in the existence of the living monument of presumption and rash ignorance which I had let loose upon the world?
Wow.
We were soon joined by Elizabeth. Time had altered her since I last beheld her.
I bet. Victor, it's been 6 years. God.
It had endowed her with loveliness, surpassing the beauty of her childish years. I was afraid he was going to say she looked old or something.
I was too. I was like, he's going to say that she looks like shit, and I'm going to be pissed. No, he's being a gentleman about it.
Let's see. Okay. There was the same candor, the same vivacity, but it was allied to an expression more full of sensibility and intellect. She welcomed me with the greatest affection. Your arrival, my dear cousin, she said, fills me with hope. You perhaps will find some means to justify my poor guiltless Justine. Alas, who is safe if she is no. Alas, who is safe if she be convicted of crime? I rely on her innocence as certainly as I do upon my own. Our misfortune is doubly hard to us. We've not only lost that lovely, darling boy, but this poor girl, whom I sincerely love, is to be torn away by even a worse fate. If she is condemned, I never shall know joy more. But she will not. I'm sure she will not. And then I will be happy again, even after the sad death of my little William. She's innocent, my Elizabeth, said I. And that shall be proved. Fear nothing, but let your spirits be cheered by the assurance of her acquittal. How kind and generous you are. Everyone else believes in her guilt, and that made me wretched, for I knew it was impossible, and to see everyone else prejudiced in so deadly a manner rendered me hopeless and despairing. And she wept. Dearest niece, said my father, dry your tears. If she is, as you believe, innocent, rely on the justice of our laws and the activity with which I shall prevent the slightest shadow of partiality. That's the end of the chapter.
I don't have a lot of faith in the justice system.
Right?
I will hold that.
Okay.
So,
remember, countenance is the drinking word of the day.
Hey, Sugar Britches. So, I think I'm mad at myself and I'm mad at these people. I'm mad at myself for jumping to the conclusion that it was the monster. And then I'm mad at these people for just assuming that it's Justine. Just like fight for her, man. She's your family.
Right?
Yeah.
I know.
It would take me a lot of convincing.
I know.
To believe that somebody I love was capable of something like that.
And here's Victor. They're saying we're out of focus and all this is in focus.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's ridiculous because I don't know. That's just crazy to just jump to that conclusion.
Yeah. Anyway.
I guess what are they supposed to think? They don't know about the creature.
True. But Victor should fess up, man. I think we can read one more.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of long, but it'll be okay.
We've got to get at least 2 chapters an episode.
I keep hitting my microphone. We're close to halfway through. Okay, here we go. Chapter 8. We passed a few sad hours until 11 o'clock when the trial was to commence. Great. My father and
can you imagine sitting around waiting for that?
No. My father and the rest of the family being obliged to attend as witnesses, I accompanied them to court. During the whole of this wretched mockery of justice, I suffered living torture. It was to be decided whether the result of my curiosity and lawless devices would cause the death of my fellow beings. One, a smiling babe full of innocence and joy. The other, far more dreadfully murdered, with every aggravation of infamy that could make the murderer memorable in horror.
Yeah, just when you think that you've hit a low point, right? You just lost your brother to some murderer. Then you find out, secondly, he finds out that it's the creature that he created with his stupidity. Or, he thinks it is the creature. And then thirdly, your other family member is accused and it's going to be thrown in prison or whatever for this murder. He's ruined life after life after life. Right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Now I've lost my place.
I'm sorry.
You
have to put your thumb there when I start talking.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's what I do.
Justine also was a girl of merit and possessed qualities which promised to render her life happy. Now all was to be obliterated in an ignominious grave, and I the cause. 1,000 times rather would I have confessed myself guilty of the crime ascribed to Justine, but I was absent when it was committed. And
I started to say, well, then do it.
And such a declaration would have been considered the ravings of a madman.
That's true.
And would not have exculpated. Is that the right word?
Exculpated?
Yeah.
I think
exculpated her who suffered through me.
Yeah.
So he's like, I would confess, but I wasn't here.
That's convenient.
Come on, Victor, step up. The appearance of Justine was calm. She was dressed in mourning, and her countenance, always engaging, was rendered by this solemnity of her feelings, exquisitely beautiful. Yet she appeared confident and innocent, and did not tremble, although gazed on and extricated by thousands. For all the kindness which her beauty might otherwise have excited was obliterated in the minds of the spectators by the imagination of the enormity she was supposed to have committed.
Yeah, a trial was a spectacle back in the day.
Yeah.
Angry mobs and such.
She was tranquil, yet her tranquility was evidently constrained. And as her confusion had before been adduced as a proof of her guilt, she worked up her mind to an appearance of courage. When she entered the court, she threw her eyes around it and quickly discovered where we were seated. A tear seemed to dim her eye when she saw us, but she quickly recovered herself.
Oh my God, that's so sad.
And a look of sorrowful affection seemed to attest her utter guiltlessness.
Oh,
so she's looking over to her family and she's like,
yeah.
And her family's probably like, hang the bitch.
It's really sad. It's really sad. And poor Victor, I cannot imagine. Can't imagine
I'm
what
sad.
he must feel like.
I'm sad.
I know. It's just going to get worse.
The trial began, and after the advocate against her had stated the charge, several witnesses were called. Several strange facts combined against her, which might have staggered anyone who had not such proof of her innocence as I had. She had been out the whole of the night on which the murder had been committed.
No alibi.
And towards morning had been perceived by a market woman not far from the spot where the boy of the murdered child had been afterwards found.
Oh, no.
The woman asked her what she did there, but she looked very strangely and only returned a confused and unintelligible answer. She returned to the house about 8 o'clock, and when one inquired where she had passed the night, she replied that she had been looking for the child and demanded earnestly if anything had been heard concerning him. When shown the body, she fell into violent hysterics and kept to her bed for several days. The picture was then produced, which the servant had found in her pocket, and when Elizabeth, in faltering voice, proved that it was the same which, an hour before the child had been missed, she placed round his neck, a murmur in horror and indignation filled the court. So there was a picture, and the court's like,
like,
can you believe it? So
people are jerks.
People are jerks, man. So,
right, poor Justine. I mean, she was probably just beside
she
herself,
probably
out
just
looking.
Found it out in the woods.
Right.
She's like, "Oh my God, I found it! I have to be close. Let me put it in my pocket."
Exactly. She was looking for him desperately.
I'm Team Justine.
Me too, all the way.
Now I've lost my place again. Hold on, I'm sorry. Oh no, I really have lost my place. Just talk for a second.
Oh, okay. So, right. So you can just imagine, you've seen enough movies to see the courtroom situation here that's happening. They've got this big mob of people. They've presented this evidence. They're all just convinced that it was Justine. But I mean, to me, it's just as easy to see that it isn't her at all. I mean, it's plausible. She would be out looking for the child. She raised him. You know, she was in the house the whole time when he was growing up. She was inconsolable. Maybe she even did they say that she was shown the body of him? And
Yeah.
then, like you said, she probably picked up she probably rescued the necklace. I mean, she wanted to save that for the family. I don't know. It's just terrible. And then she was not at herself enough to give them the necklace. She took to her bed, or so to speak.
Yeah. I really did lose my place terribly. So keep talking for a second.
Do you want me to find it?
Yeah, I think I pulled my finger out of the book even.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. You
Keep
can
talking a second.
just find your courtroom thing.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Keep on.
Okay. What do you guys think in the chat? What do you guys? Oh, now
I found it.
I started to say, what do you guys think? Who's Team Justine in the chat?
I'm Team Justine.
Me too.
Yeah, sorry. I pulled my hand out of the book.
Okay.
That was dumb. Justine was called on for her defense. As the trial proceeded, her countenance had been altered. Surprise, horror, and misery were strongly expressed. Sometimes she struggled with tears, but when she was desired to plead, she collected her powers and spoke in an audible, although variable voice. God knows, she said, how entirely I am innocent, but I do not pretend that my protestations should acquit me. I rest my innocence on a plain and simple explanation of the facts which have been adduced against me, and I hope the character I have always borne will incline my judges to a favorable interpretation where any circumstance appears doubtful or suspicious. She then related that, by the permission of Elizabeth, she had passed the evening of the night on which the murder had been committed at the house of an aunt at Cheyne, a village situated about a league from Geneva. On her return at about 9 o'clock, she met a man who asked her if she had seen anything of the child who was lost. She was alarmed by this account and passed several hours in looking for him. When the gates of Geneva were shut and she was forced to remain several hours of the night in a barn belonging to a cottage, being unwilling to call up the inhabitants to whom she was well known. Most of the night she spent here watching. Towards morning, she believed that she slept for a few minutes. Some steps disturbed her, and she awoke. It was dawn, and she quitted her asylum, that she might again endeavor to find my brother. If she had gone near the spot where the body lay, it was without her knowledge. That she had been bewildered when questioned by the market woman was not surprising, since she had passed a sleepless night. Of the poor fate of William was yet uncertain. Concerning the picture, she could give no account. That's interesting.
That is interesting. So she didn't find it and pick it up. So she has no explanation for that.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
I know, continued the unhappy victim, how heavily and fatally this one circumstance weighs against me, but I have no power of explaining it. And when I have expressed my utter ignorance, I am only left to conjecture concerning the probabilities by which it might have been placed in my pocket. But here also I am checked. I believe that I have no enemy on earth, and none surely would have been so wicked to destroy me wantonly. Did the murderer place it there? I know of no opportunity afforded him for so doing, or if I had, why should he have stolen the jewel to part with it again so soon? So she's saying, I don't know, maybe somebody put it on me.
Yeah, I mean,
but that makes you sound pretty guilty. It's not mine. Somebody put it there.
I guess it sort of makes you sound guilty.
The cops put the drugs in my car.
But she's not really being defensive. I mean, she's just being I think she sounds
matter of fact.
I think she sounds reliable. I mean, I think genuine.
She's reliable. I commit my cause to the justice of my judges, yet I see no room for hope. I beg permission to have a few witnesses examined concerning my character, and if their testimony shall not overweigh my supposed guilt, I must be condemned, although I would pledge my salvation on my innocence. So she's like, I know what's going to happen.
Yes, Mary says she's bewildered.
Yeah.
And I guess they didn't have lawyers back then, right?
Probably not.
It's probably not in the system yet.
Several witnesses were called who had known her for many years, and they spoke well of her. But fear and hatred of the crime of which they supposed her guilt rendered them timorous and unwilling to come forward. Elizabeth saw even this last resource, her excellent dispositions and irreproachable conduct, about to fail the accused when, although violently agitated, she desired permission to address the court.
Do you want me to read?
No, are you mad at me?
No, no. I was just going to rescue you if you needed to switch.
I am, she said, the cousin of the unhappy child who was murdered, or rather his sister, for I was educated by and have lived with his parents ever since, and even long before his birth. So this is Elizabeth.
See?
This is Elizabeth talking?
Yes.
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 Elizabeth,
Yes.
came to the stand. Yeah.
She's trying to speak on Justine's behalf, her character witness.
It may therefore be judged indecent in me to come forward on this occasion, but when I see a fellow creature about to perish through the cowardice of her pretended friends, I wish to be allowed to speak,
You tell him, Elizabeth.
and that I may say that I know of her character. I am well acquainted with the accused. I have lived in the same house with her, at one time for 5 and another for nearly 2 years. During all that period, she appeared to me the most amiable and benevolent of human creatures. She nursed Madame Frankenstein, my aunt, in her last illness with the greatest affection and care, and afterwards attended her own mother during tedious illness in a manner that excited the admiration of all who knew her. After which she again lived in my uncle's house, where she was beloved by all the family. She was warmly attached to the child who is now dead, and acted towards him like a most affectionate mother. For my own part, I do not hesitate to say that notwithstanding all the evidence produced against her, I believe and rely on her perfect innocence. She had no temptation for such an action. As to the bauble on which the chief proof rests, she had earnestly desired it. I would have willingly given it to her. So much I esteem and value her. Well, good for Elizabeth.
Beth says this will not end well.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But good for Elizabeth for standing up and, being real. Those other people are like, well, I think she's probably pretty decent, but I don't know, man. She's accused of this murder,
right?
So maybe she's got me all bamboozled. But Elizabeth is telling the truth. You ready to continue?
Yes.
A murmur of approbation followed Elizabeth's simple and powerful appeal, but it was excited by her generous interference, and not in favor of poor Justine, on whom the public indignation was turned with renewed violence, charging her with the blackest ingratitude. She herself wept as Elizabeth spoke, but she did not answer. My own agitation and anguish was extreme during the whole trial.
I bet. This is Victor again, right?
I believed in her innocence. I knew it. Could the demon who had, I did not for a minute doubt, murdered my brother, also in his hellish sport, have betrayed the innocents to death and ignominy? I can't say that. So he's just going to sit there?
Right?
He's not going to stand up and be like, guys...
Hi, let me
Victor
tell you.
Frankenstein here. I have been at school for the last 6 years. I made a guy, and I think he might be the dude that murdered my brother. I saw him.
Well, at least he wouldn't even have to confess to making him, but he could at least say he saw this figure in the woods.
Come on. I can't even. I'm going to let you read.
Okay.
But I've got to find where I was. I've ended on that word that I can't say. Talk for a second and I'll find it. Oh, I was here. Here we go.
Okay.
I could not sustain.
Okay. I could not sustain the horror of my situation, and when I perceived that the popular voice and the countenances of the judges had already condemned my unhappy victim, I rushed out of the court in agony. The tortures of
He's just running away.
The tortures of the accused did not equal mine. She was sustained by innocence, but the fangs of remorse tore my bosom and would not forego their hold.
Who cares about his bosom?
That's it. I mean, he just ran out of the courtroom.
I mean, she doesn't have an explanation for that picture. And she admitted it. She's like, I don't have an explanation for that.
I passed a night of unmingled wretchedness. In the morning, I went to the court. My lips and throat were parched. I dared not ask the fatal question, but I was known, and the officer guessed the cause of my visit. The ballots had been thrown. They were all black, and Justine was condemned.
Oh,
dun,
no.
dun, dun.
Bum, bum, bum.
Oh, my God. I knew this was going to happen. I cannot pretend to describe what I then felt. I had before experienced sensations of horror. I have endeavored to bestow upon them adequate expressions, but words cannot convey an idea of the heart-sickening despair that I then endured. The person to whom I addressed myself added that Justine had already confessed her guilt. That evidence, he observed, was hardly required in so glaring a case, but I am glad of it, and indeed none of our judges like to condemn a criminal upon circumstantial evidence, be it ever so decisive. This was strange and unexpected intelligence. What could it mean? Had my eyes deceived me? And was I really as mad as the whole world would believe me to be if I disclosed the object of my suspicions? I hastened to return home, and Elizabeth eagerly demanded the result. Now he's got to go home and tell Elizabeth this. My cousin, replied I, it is decided as you may have expected. All judges had rather than 10 innocent should suffer than one guilty should escape, but she has confessed.
She confessed?
Yeah, you didn't hear that? That's what
No, I missed that part.
Yeah, the guy was telling her that they were glad that they had circumstantial evidence, but they were glad that she admitted the crime.
Why did she do that? Did she do it?
I mean, I don't think so, but let's see. I think that we're going to find out. Yes, this was a dire blow to poor Elizabeth, who had relied with firmness upon Justine's innocence. Alas, said she, how shall I ever again believe in human goodness? Justine, whom I loved and esteemed as my sister, how could she put on those smiles of innocence only to betray? Her mild eyes seemed incapable of any severity or guile, and yet she has committed a murder. Soon after we heard that the poor victim had expressed a desire to see my cousin, my father wished her not to go, but said that he left it to her own judgment and feelings to decide. Yes, said Elizabeth, I will go, although she is guilty, and you, Victor, shall accompany me. I cannot go alone. The idea of this visit was torture to me, yet I could not refuse.
I'm so confused.
So Justine, they've came back and they voted to her guilty, right?
Yeah.
They voted her guilty. She confessed probably after that. I mean, she probably was like, well, what the heck? I'm just going to tell him. I don't know why she did that.
Unless she actually did.
But now she's asked to see Elizabeth. I mean, I guess she's waiting her punishment, and she's asked to see Elizabeth, and Elizabeth's going, and she's like, by God, Victor, you're going with me.
Yeah.
I'm not going by myself.
I wonder if it's like today's things where if you plead guilty, you get a smaller sentence.
Maybe she was trying to spare her life.
Which I don't understand that, but that's another
that's another podcast altogether.
Yeah.
So let's see what she says when they go see her. We entered the gloomy prison chamber and beheld Justine sitting on some straw at the farther end. Her hands were manacled and her head rested on her knees. She rose on seeing us enter, and when we were left alone with her, she threw herself at the feet of Elizabeth, weeping bitterly. My cousin wept also. Oh, Justine, said she, why did you rob me of my last consolation? I relied on your innocence, and although I was then very wretched, I was not so miserable as I am now. And do you also believe that I am so very, very wicked? Do you also join with my enemies to crush me, to condemn me as a murderer? Her voice was suffocated with sobs. Rise, my poor girl, said Elizabeth. Why do you kneel if you are innocent? I'm not one of your enemies. I believed you guiltless, notwithstanding every evidence, until I heard that you had yourself declared your guilt. That report, you say, is false, and be assured, dear Justine, that nothing can shake my confidence in you for a moment but your own confession. I did confess, but I confessed a lie. I confessed that I might obtain absolution.
Oh, yeah.
But now that falsehood lies heavier at my heart than all my other sins. You know, she's just sorry now that she said that she did it. It's not going to do any good, and she didn't do it. The God of heaven forgive me. Ever since I was condemned, my confessor has besieged me. He threatened and menaced until I almost began to think that I was the monster that he said I was.
Okay, stop. So that's a thing. That's totally a thing. So I watch a lot of crime crap on TV and it's totally a thing. I mean, these cops get it in their mind sometimes that somebody's done something and they just like get on them and question and question and question, and finally you get it in your mind. They're like, oh my God, if I just say that I did it, it'll stop.
I know, right? Jamie says, I'm caught up now. What the actual crap, Justine?
So I honestly think that's a thing.
Yeah.
Where you feel like you're just berated and just like yelled at and questioned and accused over and over and over. And I think that in some of these instances, you know, sometimes people feel like, oh my God, if I just say I did it, it's going to be over. Mm-hmm. And then what? Then you're toast.
Yeah, I know I didn't do it, but I'm just going to tell them I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I've like watched a bunch of shows where people, you know, go to prison and when they didn't do something, but they confess that they did it just because of like police brutality in some form or fashion.
Yes.
And I'm not saying all police do that, but I think it has been known to happen.
Yes. So she's explaining, you know, that they were berating her. And then she says, he threatened excommunication and hellfire in my last moments if I continued obdurate, or which means if she continued to refuse not to.
Thanks for explaining what that word is. I'm terrible at words. Oh, no.
I thought you were making fun of me.
Here comes the tender hot dating.
I think they like Justine. The trolls. Dear lady, I had none to support me. All looked on me as a wretch doomed to ignominy and perdition. What could I do? In an evil hour.
How do you say that word?
Ignominy?
Ignominy. I can't say that very well.
What could I do? In an evil hour I subscribed to a lie, and now only am I truly miserable. So now she's just, I mean, God, how could it, you think it can't get any worse, and then it's worse. Now she's been found guilty, and now she's heartbroken because she has confessed and she didn't really do it.
She is just wretched.
She paused weeping and then continued. I thought with horror, my sweet lady, that you should believe your Justine, whom your blessed aunt had so highly honored and whom you loved, was a creature capable of a crime which none but the devil himself could have perpetrated. Dear William, dearest blessed child, I soon shall see you again in heaven, where we shall all be happy, and that consoles me, going as I am to suffer ignominy and death.
Oh, Justine.
Oh, Justine, forgive me for having for one moment distrusted you. Why did you confess? But do not mourn, dear girl. Do not fear. I will prove your innocence. I will melt the stony hearts of your enemies by my tears and prayers. You shall not die. You, my playfellow, my companion, my sister, perish on the scaffold? No, I could never survive such a horrible misfortune.
No, Elizabeth.
Oh,
I
what
don't
a
feel like
scene.
you're going to fix it.
Justine shook her head mournfully. I do not fear to die, she said. That pang is past. God raises my weakness and gives me courage to endure the worst. I leave a sad and bitter world, and if you remember me and think of me as of one unjustly condemned, I am resigned to the fate awaiting me. Learn from me, dear lady, to submit in patience to the will of heaven. During this conversation, here comes Victor. During this conversation, I had retired to the corner of the prison room where I could conceal the horrid anguish that possessed me.
Hold on, you're getting red.
Oh, I'm so into it.
You're getting red on your microphone.
Beth says, and hung either way, and Jamie says, yeah, Justine's screwed. Okay, sorry. Despair who dared talk of that? The poor victim who on the morrow was to pass the awful boundary between life and death felt not, as I did, such deep and bitter agony. I gnashed my teeth and ground them together, uttering a groan that came from my inmost soul. Oh. Justine started. When she saw who it was, she approached me and said, "Dear sir, you are very kind to visit me. You, I hope, do not believe that I am guilty." So Victor's sitting over in the corner.
Victor is the actual worst, Jamie says.
Oh, yeah. Victor's sitting over in the corner, and all of a sudden he's like, "Ah!" It's like has some fit of agony over there. And poor Justine, she's the one that's going to die. She's come over here going, "Hey, are you okay? What's happening over here, Victor?" I could not answer.
I bet.
So Victor can't even speak up at this moment. So poor Elizabeth. Elizabeth's like, "No, Justine," said Elizabeth. "He's more convinced of your innocence than I was. For even when he heard that you had confessed, he did not credit it or believe it." Ugh. I truly thank him. In these last moments, I feel the sincerest gratitude towards those who think of me with kindness. How sweet is the affection of others to such a wretch as I am. It removes more than half my misfortune, and I feel as if I could die in peace now that my innocence is acknowledged by you, dear lady, and your cousin. Thus, the poor sufferer tried to comfort others and herself. She indeed gained the resignation she desired, but I, the true murderer, felt the never-dying worm alive in my bosom, which allowed of no hope or consolation. Elizabeth also wept and was unhappy, but hers also was the misery of innocence, which like a cloud that passes over the fair moon, for a while hides but cannot tarnish its brightness. Anguish and despair had penetrated into the core of my heart. I bore a hell within me which nothing could extinguish. We stayed several hours with Justine, and it was with great difficulty that Elizabeth could tear herself away. "I wish," cried she, "that I were to die with you. I cannot live in this world of misery."
Elizabeth is a
Poor
good
Elizabeth.
person. If Elizabeth had made a person, a creature, and if this were reversed, Elizabeth would totally have gone to the judge and be like, "Listen, I made this guy. He's out running around on the loose. I really think that that's what you need to be looking for right now. Justine did not do this." But Victor's just over there like drumming his fingers on the table
or ripping his own heart out, but like not helping anybody in the process.
He is just the worst.
Justine assumed an air of cheerfulness. This is really sad.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is terrible. Justine assumed an air of cheerfulness while she with difficulty repressed her bitter tears. Sorry. She embraced Elizabeth and said in a voice of half-suppressed emotion, "Farewell, sweet lady, dearest Elizabeth, my beloved and only friend. May heaven in its bounty bless and preserve you. May this be the last misfortune that you will ever suffer. Live and be happy and make others so."
Wow.
God, that's really sad.
Jamie says, "Yeah, Elizabeth wouldn't have just ditched the monster and ran away like a chicken. She would have handled her shit."
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she probably could have helped Victor too if he had at least told her.
Exactly.
And on the morrow, Justine died.
Oh, God.
Elizabeth's heart-rending eloquence failed to move the judges from their settled conviction in the criminality of the saintly sufferer. My passionate and indignant appeals were lost upon them, and when I received their cold answers and heard the harsh, unfeeling reasoning of these men, my purposed avowal died away on my lips. Thus I might proclaim myself a madman, but not revoke the sentence passed upon my wretched victim. She perished on the scaffold as a murderess.
Yikes.
From the tortures of my own heart, I turned to contemplate the deep and voiceless grief of my Elizabeth. This also was my doing, and my father's woe, and the desolation of that late so smiling home, all was the work of my thrice accursed hands. Ye weep, unhappy ones, but these are not your last tears. Again shall you raise the funeral wail, and the sound of your lamentations shall again and again be heard. Frankenstein, your son, your kinsman, your early much-loved friend, he who would spend each vital drop of blood for your sakes, who has no thought nor sense of joy except as it is mirrored also in your dear countenances. Who would fill the air with blessings and spend his life in serving you? He bids you weep, to shed countless tears, happy beyond his hopes, of thus inexorable fate be satisfied. And if the destruction pause before the peace of the grave have succeeded to your sad torments. Wow.
Jamie's like, yeah, this is all your fault, Victor. Good freaking job.
Now who's the wretch?
Yeah. Antique agenda. That's
Thus spoke my prophetic soul, as torn by remorse, horror, and despair. I beheld those I loved spend vain sorrow upon the graves of William and Justine, the first hapless victims to my unhallowed arts.
How can he live with himself?
Yeah,
so, first of all, he makes this creature. It runs away, and he's just like, nah, great. I'm going to do what I want to do with my friend, with William. Or no, not William, Henry.
Yeah.
I'm going to just hang out with Henry for a few years. Mm-hmm. That's cool. I'm not going to think about that creature anymore. And then the creature kills his brother, and he goes home, and his house girl is about to be murdered, and he's just like, yeah, I probably won't say anything about that.
Well, I mean, he's not like that. He is tormented, but he
I
just
know
doesn't
he's tormented, but he's not doing anything.
Jamie says the first victims. That means there's more coming. The first hapless victims to my unhallowed arts.
If you make something,
unhallowed arts. That's a cool phrase.
If you make a pie and you just leave it out on the counter, it's going to mold eventually. You've got to do something about it.
If you see something, say something.
If you see something, say something. And if you make a creature, you got to have some sort of a plan, and you've got to assume some responsibility. If you have a dog and it goes out and bites somebody, you can't just be like,
Jamie says, eat the damn pie.
Put it on a leash. Put your dude on a leash. Give him a name. Give him a job. Give him some clothes. He's probably naked. And do something.
I know.
I'm in a bad mood.
That's really made you in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think that we're going to have to stop there. We've done our 2 chapters.
Yeah.
We're going to let that soak in for a minute.
Yeah.
Poor Justine. I mean, they just hung her. They hung her.
Rip, Justine. The end. Eat the damn pie. That's right. I'm telling you.
No, it's not the end yet, though, Mary Beth. That's the bad part. It's not even the end. This is the first.
That we know of.
Of the terrible... Well, he says it. The first hapless victims to my unhallowed arts. That's what I keep telling you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's more to come. I mean, we're only halfway through the book.
But it's been 2 years. I mean, he could have killed somebody already that we don't know about.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this has been the podcast, Tales from the Fit Out Closet with Mary Beth and Laura, Fatbird Finds. We're really glad that you've joined us here live this Saturday afternoon. We will be putting this podcast up on all your favorite podcasting sites here shortly. What else do we do?
Where do you like to listen to podcasts?
I don't know, Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, I use Spotify, but it's on all the major ones.
It's on all the major. It's on a lot of them. It's on about 10 or 12, I think, podcast sites. Just so you know, it should be on your favorite one. So anyway, if you're out there in podcast land listening, make sure you follow the podcast. We would love for you to come over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel here. Our regular gig is that we resell vintage collectibles on our YouTube channel and eBay. We also have a Friday night show called Flippin and Sippin, where we celebrate the weekend, have a drink, sell a few items, and have some fun.
Yeah. So this podcast is a little out of our box, but we're having a good time doing it. So we hope that you join us for the rest of it.
Exactly. So if you're listening to this later on YouTube, make sure you leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of the story so far. And we're excited. Anything else?
I think that's it.
All right, everybody. Well, as always, have a great rest of your weekend. Give this video a thumbs up before you go. And as always, make sure you stay tuned to see what Fatbird finds next. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.